Let's jump right in, shall we? Welcome to this explainer. I am so pumped to take you through today's topic. I want to start off by asking you a question that is, quite frankly, a little bizarre, maybe even a little ridiculous. Are you ready? Why can't you taste with your forehead? Right? I know. It sounds like total nonsense, but stick with me. By the end of this explainer, this absurd little question is going to completely shatter how you view your everyday reality. We're going to look at the exact mechanisms of how we interact with the world around us, and more importantly, what those mechanisms actually mean. Section 1, the forehead taste test. Conducting the absurd experiment. Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp the profound nature of our senses, we first got to test our physical boundaries. We have to conduct a little thought experiment. Highly scientific, obviously. So I want you to picture this right now. You take a delicious, super ripe piece of melon, and you vigorously rub it right on your forehead. What happens? Do you taste anything? Well, no, of course not. Zero taste. Okay, let's try your arm. Nope, still absolutely nothing. What about your knee? Go ahead, rub that melon on your knee. Well, congratulations, you now have a very sticky knee. But you still haven't tasted a single thing. It literally isn't until we reach step 3, actually putting that melon inside your mouth, that suddenly your brain lights up and registers, oh wow, that's sweet. It's kind of hilarious to picture, right? Rubbing fruit all over yourself. But it highlights this massive, glaring truth about our biology that we just take totally for granted every single time we take a bite of food. And you can see how this plays out with our other senses too. Just imagine taking a gorgeous, fragrant flower and holding it right next to your ear. What do you get? Crickets. Nothing. Your ear doesn't care about pollen. It has absolutely no idea how to process the chemical compounds of that scent. But you shift that flower just a few inches to the right, put it near your nose, and bam, instantly a rich scent is detected. It just goes to show how incredibly, intensely localized our senses actually are. Which brings us to our final, utterly ridiculous scenario. Imagine grabbing your smartphone, holding it flat against your nose, and shouting, "No sound! This is a terrible phone!" I mean, it sounds completely insane, right? Because as we obviously know, the phone is perfectly fine. It works flawlessly. The actual problem is that you're applying it to the entirely wrong department of your sensory system. We are just so used to walking around automatically using the right departments all day long that we never stop to realize how specific and, honestly, how fragile this entire operation actually is. Moving on to Section 2, Keys and Locks, the biology of compatibility. So let's shift gears away from the comedy of sticky knees and phones on our noses, and let's really look at the biology of compatibility. Because the truth laid out in our source material is that we are so incredibly used to our senses, we rarely, if ever, actually stop to notice the extraordinary compatibility between our physical bodies and the vast world outside. And science? Science does an absolutely brilliant job of investigating exactly how all of this works. We map out the tiny receptors on our tongues and inside our nasal cavities. We trace these incredibly complex, intricate highways of nerves. We can identify specific brain regions lining up under an MRI scanner. We can even measure the exact electrical signals zipping through our biology. It is fascinating hardware. And really, understanding this biological machinery is for sure one of humanity's greatest achievements. But here's the thing. Mapping the hardware, that's really only half the story. And this is where the plot really thickens. Just think about the elements of the external world compared to our specific biological hardware. There is light in the universe, and we happen to have eyes perfectly able to receive it. There are sound waves vibrating through the air all around us, and we have ears specifically built with tiny drums and microscopic bones just to detect it. Food contains incredibly specific chemical qualities, and guess what? We possess the exact taste receptors required to decode them. The world is filled with scents, and we have this amazing olfactory system capable of perceiving them. I really want you to just sit and think about this perfect balance for a second. Pair by pair, element by element. The outside world offers something, and our inside world has the exact, precise tool built to receive it. Which leads us directly to the most important question of this entire explainer. Science tells us the how. It gives us the incredibly detailed diagrams of the eyes and the ears. But why? Why is the external world so astonishingly compatible with the systems inside us? How is it that the universe produces a specific frequency, and the human body just so happens to have a receiver perfectly tuned to that exact frequency? This is a massive pivot, guys. We're moving from asking how things work to asking what their coordination actually implies. It's almost like keys and locks constantly matching. Think about a regular house key for a moment. A key has very specific ridges, very specific grooves, right? It's pretty much entirely meaningless on its own. But when you slide it into a lock that was designed with pins matching those exact ridges, boom, it turns, the lock opens. The light outside is the key. Your eye is the lock. The chemical makeup of that slice of melon is the key. The taste bud on your tongue is the lock. Every single second of your waking life is just this continuous, flawless matching of millions of microscopic keys and locks. Section 3. The contemplative method. Looking deeper with the Risalia Enor. To really process this overwhelming level of coordination, the source material draws upon a contemplative method from the Risalia Enor, specifically from a section called The Flashes, 23rd Flash, the Treatise on Nature. Now look, often when people introduce philosophy or deeper contemplation, there's this knee-jerk fear that it pushes back against scientific understanding. But this contemplative method does not say, hey, stop learning the science. It doesn't tell us to just ignore the nerves and the receptors. On the contrary, it does say, look even more carefully. It practically demands that we use science. It uses the cold, hard scientific reality of these perfect biological locks and keys as a magnifying glass to help us see the deeper truth of our existence. There is a super profound realization here, because when you understand the mechanisms, the coordination can become even more remarkable. This is a total paradigm shift. Learning the science behind taste receptors shouldn't make eating a piece of melon boring. It shouldn't strip the magic away from the experience. Actually, when you realize just how complex those electrical signals are, how impossibly precise the coordination between the chemical in the fruit and the nerve in your tongue actually is, your awe shouldn't diminish. It should absolutely skyrocket. Knowing the mechanism literally proves how intentional the design of the key and the lock truly is. Bringing us to Section 4, Miracles Disguised as Normal, Redefining Our Everyday Reality. We're going to take everything we've just learned, the absurd melon experiment, the perfect biological locks and keys, and this contemplative method of looking closer, and we're going to fundamentally redefine your baseline reality. Consider this for a second. Maybe our problem is not that reality gives us nothing to wonder about. Maybe we have simply become way too familiar with it. We walk around feeling bored half the time. We eat our lunch while just staring blankly at a screen, totally numb to the actual experience of tasting it. We just assume the world is mundane. But guess what? The problem isn't the world. The world is out here throwing perfectly matched biological keys into our perfectly calibrated physiological locks millions of times a minute. The problem is us. We're suffering from an extreme case of familiarity. We've just gotten way too used to the magic. It all comes down to this one thought. We see miracles every single morning, and we just call them normal. The fact that you can perceive the scent of fresh coffee brewing, or hear the sound of a loved one's voice, or taste the sweetness of a piece of fruit. These are not mundane biological accidents. The absolute, mind-boggling precision required for these events to happen makes them continuous, undeniable miracles. But just because they happen every day, we slap a boring label on them. We call them normal. And this contemplative method, it completely challenges us to rip that label right off and see them for what they truly, actually are. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Next time you sit down to a meal, next time you taste something sweet, sour, or savory, I really want you to remember that your forehead never stood a chance. That incredible, localized, highly specific miracle of your senses is operating perfectly just for you. Don't let familiarity blind you to the absolute wonder of the reality happening right inside your own mouth. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep looking closely and ask yourself, what other daily miracles are you simply calling normal?